What happens when petty power meets real power? A 17-year-old girl, flying alone to the most important audition of her life, is publicly humiliated by a flight attendant. The crime? Being black and asking for an empty seat. The flight attendant, smug in her authority, tells the girl, "People like you need to stay where you're assigned." But she just made the biggest mistake of her career. Because what she doesn't know is that the girl's father is billionaire Robert Sinclair. And he's about to teach her, and the entire airline, a lesson in hard karma they will never forget. The chaos of JFK's Terminal 4 was a familiar symphony to Maya Sinclair. At 17, she had traveled more than most people do in a lifetime, yet she'd never gotten used to the impersonal hustle. She clutched the handle of her violin case, a 1741 Guarneri del Jesus, a piece of history worth more than the plane she was about to board. To anyone else, she was just another teenager in a grey, unbranded, but ludicrously expensive cashmere tracksuit, her box braids pulled back into a neat bun. She looked anonymous, and that's how she liked it. She was flying Aero Meridian Global, flight AM 112, direct to London Heathrow. This wasn't a vacation. This was the audition for the Royal Academy of Music, a moment she and her father had been planning for a decade. Boarding was called for Economy Plus. Maya shuffled in line, her passport and ticket in hand. She felt the usual knot in her stomach, not from flying, but from the audition. She needed to be rested. She needed to be calm. As she stepped onto the jet bridge and into the cabin, she was greeted by the lead flight attendant. The woman's name tag read Brenda Hoskins. She was a woman in her late 40s, with a severe blonde bob and a smile that was more of a baring of teeth. "Welcome," Brenda said, her eyes flicking over Maya's ticket, then over Maya's face, then down to her tracksuit. The smile didn't reach her eyes. It didn't even try. "Hi," Maya said softly, moving past. Her seat, 34B, was an aisle seat in the Economy Plus cabin. As she settled in, she immediately noticed a problem. The high-definition screen on the seat back in front of her was black. She tapped it. Nothing. She pressed the power button. Nothing. A 7-hour flight with no entertainment. Worse, she couldn't review the performance videos her coach had sent her. She looked ahead. The business-class cabin was just through the bulkhead, separated by a thin curtain. As passengers filed past, she saw at least 2, maybe 3, empty pod seats. Just ask, she thought. Dad always says, the worst they can say is no. Maya unbuckled and walked the few steps to the galley, where Brenda was busy tapping on a manifest. "Excuse me, Mum," Maya said, her voice polite. Brenda looked up, her annoyance visible. "Can I help you?" "Hi, yes. My entertainment screen at 34B is completely broken. It won't turn on. I was wondering, I saw a couple of empty seats in business class, if it would be possible to move. I have an important audition when I land, and I really need to review my notes on the screen." Brenda's plastic smile returned, but her eyes were flinty. "Honey," she began, the word dripping with condescension. "Those seats are for our premium passengers. They're not just available for anyone." "Oh, I understand that," Maya said, flushing slightly. "It's just that my seat is defective, and the flight looks full. I thought—" Brenda leaned in, lowering her voice to a theatrical, cutting whisper. "The business class manifest is set. We don't just hand out $5,000 seats because an economy screen is on the fritz." She looked Maya up and down again, her gaze lingering on her braids. "People like you need to understand that. You should stay where you're assigned." The words hung in the air, sharp and toxic. "People like you." Maya felt the blood drain from her face. Every passenger in the surrounding rows was now staring. A man in a suit, Mr. Henderson in 22C, looked up from his Wall Street Journal with a frown. A woman across the aisle from him, Susan in 22D, audibly tisked and shook her head, though it was unclear at whom. "People like me?" Maya repeated, her voice barely a whisper. "The passengers in the cabin you paid for," Brenda snapped, her patience gone. "Now please return to your seat. You're blocking the aisle." Humiliation burned Maya's cheeks. She was frozen. She wasn't just a girl. She was a black girl in a tracksuit, and this woman had reduced her to a stereotype. She wanted to say, "My father could buy this seat, this row, this entire plane. My violin case is worth more than your salary." But she didn't. Her father had taught her that people who brag about their wealth have no real class. Defeated, she turned and walked back to 34B. She sat down, her hands trembling. The cabin door was sealed. The plane began its pushback. Maya pulled out her phone and sent a single text to her father before the flight attendant instructed everyone to switch to airplane mode. "Dad, the worst flight ever." The flight attendant, Brenda Hoskins, was awful. She told me, "People like you need to stay in their seats. I'm so humiliated." She hit send, the message turning green to blue just as the signal cut out. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. It was going to be a very, very long 7 hours. While Maya was climbing to 35,000 feet, it was 7:30 p.m. in New York City. Robert Sinclair was not a man accustomed to waiting. He stood in his penthouse office on the 80th floor of a new Columbus Circle high-rise, a glass triangle that stabbed the Manhattan sky. The office was minimalist, a desk of black marble, a wall of glass overlooking Central Park, and a single priceless Basquiat. Robert was a shark. He'd built Sinclair Holdings from a $10,000 loan into a $50 billion private equity Goliath. He'd started with nothing, fighting prejudice at every turn as a black man in the cutthroat world of 1990s finance. He was ruthless, brilliant, and feared. But he had one vulnerability: Maya. She was all he had left of his late wife, Elena. He saw Elena's grace in Maya's every move, heard her brilliance in Maya's music. The thought of anyone hurting her, even slightly, sent a cold, precise rage through his veins. His phone buzzed on the marble desk. He glanced at the text. He read it once. He read it twice. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Brenda Hoskins," he said aloud. "People like you." He knew exactly what that phrase meant. He had heard variations of it his entire life. But to hear it directed at his 17-year-old daughter? Unacceptable. He didn't text back. He knew she couldn't respond. Instead, he pressed a button on his desk intercom. "Julian, my office. Now." Julian Vance was Robert's right hand, a man who moved through the digital and financial world like a ghost. He was in the office in 20 seconds, tablet in hand. "Sir." "Aero Meridian Global," Robert said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He turned to face the window. "I want to know everything. Their stock symbol, their market cap, their debt load, their board of directors, their majority shareholders, and the name of their CEO." Julian didn't blink. "By morning, sir." "By the time my car gets downstairs," Robert said. "I'm going to the office, the real one." Julian vanished. Robert grabbed his suit jacket. His phone buzzed again. It was a pre-scheduled notification. Maya, AM 112, scheduled to land at LHR 07:15 GMT. 7 hours, Robert said to the empty room. "Let's see what we can do in 7 hours." By the time Robert stepped into his chauffeured Bentley, Julian was already in the passenger seat, his face illuminated by his tablet. "Aero Meridian Global, ticker AMGL," Julian said, rapid fire. "Market cap $2.2 billion. They're weak, sir. Very weak. They're over-leveraged from a bad fuel hedging strategy. Stock is down 40% year over year. They've had 2 union disputes in the last 18 months. Who owns them? Robert asked, his eyes on the passing lights of the city. Scattered, Julian said. A few big institutional holders. The largest single block, about 18%, is held by Westwood Capital. They're a legacy fund. The rest is owned by smaller funds and the public. CEO. David Markham, a lifer. Started in baggage, worked his way up. Not a shark, sir. A carp. Westwood Capital, Robert mused. That's Daniel Evans's fund, isn't it? I remember him. He's all about quarterly profits. He must be desperate to dump a bleeding-out airline stock. I'd assume so, sir. Good. Robert leaned back. Get Daniel Evans on the phone. I don't care that it's nearly 8 p.m. Tell him Robert Sinclair wants to make him a very rich man tonight. Julian's fingers flew. And, sir, what's the play? Are we taking a position? Robert Sinclair finally allowed himself a small, cold smile. A position? No, Julian. He looked at his loyal fixer. By the time Maya lands in London, I want controlling interest. We're buying the whole damn airline. Maya's humiliation was a living thing, a cold, heavy presence in the seat beside her. With the screen broken, the darkness of the cabin felt absolute. She tried to sleep, to escape into the oblivion of a transatlantic nap, but her mind replayed Brenda Hoskins's words on a loop. People like you. Stay where you're assigned. She pulled out her sheet music, a complex Paganini composition, and tried to study it with her tiny, battery-powered reading light. Mom. Maya jumped. Brenda was standing over her, her face a mask of false politeness. You'll have to turn that off. It's disturbing the passenger next to you. Maya glanced at the man in 34C. He was completely asleep, mouth open, a sleeping mask over his eyes. He's asleep, Maya whispered. It's policy, Mom. All non-cabin lights off until the morning service. This was a blatant lie, and they both knew it. But I need to study. And I need you to follow the rules, Brenda said, her voice like steel. She waited until Maya, with a shaking hand, clicked the light off. Brenda gave a curt nod and disappeared back to the galley. An hour later, the dinner service began. The cart clattered down the aisle, operated by Brenda and a younger flight attendant named Tom. When they reached Maya's row, Tom offered her the chicken. May I just have the pasta, please? Maya asked. Brenda, who was handling the drinks, leaned across. We're out of the pasta. Her tone implied this was somehow Maya's fault. Oh, okay. The chicken is fine, then, Maya said, trying to be agreeable. As Brenda handed her the tray, she accidentally sloshed a cup of ice water. Cold water spilled over the tray onto Maya's lap, soaking the front of her cashmere joggers. Oh dear, Brenda said, her eyes wide with fake innocence. Clumsy me. Turbulence. The air in the cabin was perfectly still. Maya gasped at the cold shock. You spilled it on me. It's just water, honey. It'll dry. Brenda handed her a single, useless cocktail napkin and moved on, ignoring Maya's drenched state. Maya sat there, shivering and furious. The man in 22C, Mr. Henderson, saw the whole thing. He pressed his call button. Brenda ignored it for 5 full minutes. When she finally appeared, her annoyance was clear. Yes? That girl, Mr. Henderson said, his voice low but firm. The one you spilled water on. You were completely out of line. First at the door, and now this. It's blatant harassment. Brenda's entire demeanor changed. She went from predator to prey, her voice becoming defensive. Sir, I have no idea what you're talking about. It was an accident. And that passenger was being disruptive earlier, demanding a free upgrade she hadn't paid for. She was asking about a broken screen, Henderson countered, and you told her people like you shouldn't ask. I said no such thing, Brenda said, her voice rising, attracting more attention. I will not be slandered by you. I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, or I'll have the captain radio ahead and have you detained at Heathrow for interfering with a flight crew. It was an incredible threat, a nuclear option. Mr. Henderson, a journalist who recognized a losing battle when he saw one, stared at her. You are a disgrace to that uniform, he said quietly. He pressed his call button again to turn it off, then turned his back to her. Brenda, fuming, retreated to the rear galley. Maya, who had overheard the exchange, felt a fresh wave of despair. The one person who tried to help was now silenced. She had to get out of the wet clothes. She carefully retrieved her violin, placed it on her seat, and went to the back lavatory with her carry-on to change into leggings. As she stood near the galley waiting for the lavatory to be free, she overheard Brenda talking to Tom inside. I cannot believe that man, Brenda was ranting. And that girl. She waltzes on in her knockoff tracksuit, probably bought with government money, waving her audition story around like she's special. She demanded a business-class seat. The nerve. I put her right back in her box. Someone has to. Brenda, ease up, Tom's voice said, sounding tired. She's just a kid, and that guy in 22C heard you. You're going to get yourself in trouble. Trouble? Brenda scoffed. I've been with Aero Meridian for 22 years. I'm the senior crew on this flight. I am the trouble. They can write all the letters they want. They go in a file and nothing happens. That's the secret, Tom. Nothing ever happens. The lavatory door opened. Maya, her face a mask, slipped inside. She locked the door, leaned against it, and finally let the tears come. Brenda was right. She was a 17-year-old girl, and Brenda was the system. Nothing would ever happen. In the 50th floor conference room of Sinclair Holdings, the air was electric. It was 10 p.m. Robert Sinclair sat at the head of a long, dark wood table, a phone on speaker in the center. Julian was at a terminal, charts and data flashing on a wall-sized screen. Mr. Evans, Robert said, his voice smooth as silk. A pleasure. I'm sorry to call so late. Daniel Evans, CEO of Westwood Capital, sounded wary. Robert, this is a surprise. My assistant said it was urgent. What can I do for you? You're holding an 18% stake in Aero Meridian Global, Robert said, getting straight to the point. There was a pause. I am. It's been a problematic holding. The fuel hedges are killing us. My board is unhappy. I know, Robert said. I've seen your quarterly reports. It's a dog, Daniel, and it's dragging your whole fund down. You want out. We're always exploring strategic options, Evans began, using corporate speak. Robert cut him off. Let's skip the dance. The stock closed at 14 decimals 50. It's going to open lower on Monday when the new European fuel tariffs are announced. I know it. You know it. Robert, where is this going? I'm wiring you cash. Tonight. I'll take your entire position, all 18% of it. Evans was silent. This was unheard of. A block trade of this size, at night, without lawyers, was insane. You're making a tender offer? No, I'm making you an offer. I'll give you $18 a share, right now. That's a 24% premium on a stock that's about to fall off a cliff. You get to walk away clean. You book a win. Your board thinks you're a genius for finding a miracle buyer. Julian's fingers were typing furiously. The total cost was flashing on his screen, approximately $396 million. Evans was calculating. It was a golden parachute. Why, Robert? Why this stock? What do you know that I don't? I know, Robert said, his voice hardening almost imperceptibly. That their customer service is lacking. And I've decided to take a very, very personal interest in fixing it. This is a one-time offer, Daniel. You have 60 seconds before I hang up and call your next largest competitor and start a proxy war on Monday morning. I'll bleed your position dry in public. Your choice. It was brutal, brilliant extortion. Evans knew Robert wasn't bluffing. My God, Robert, Evans breathed. You're serious. 45 seconds. We need to paper this. Lawyers. My team will have the paperwork to your team in 10 minutes. The wire transfer will be initiated from our holding in Zurich in 15. We sign tonight. We file the SEC paperwork pre-market Monday. Do we have a deal, Daniel? There was a long, heavy sigh. Yes, we have a deal. Send the paper. Robert smiled. Pleasure doing business with you, Daniel. He clicked off the phone. Julian, Robert said. Sir. That gets us to 18%. It makes us the largest shareholder, but it's not controlling interest. I want control. Julian anticipated this. The next two largest holders are index funds. They won't sell, but the public float is 45%. We can initiate a tender offer on Monday for 33% of the public stock at $20 a share. It'll cost another $750 million. People will stampede to sell. We'll have 51% by Wednesday. No, Robert said. Not good enough. I want it by morning. Julian looked stunned. Sir, that's impossible. The markets are closed. I'm not talking about the New York Stock Exchange. I'm talking about the after-hours market, the dark pools. I want you to set up buy orders, huge ones, at $22 a share. Anyone who has a sell order, trigger anywhere near that price. I want it bought, immediately. Use the holding companies in Dublin and the Caymans. Spread it out. I want to trigger a panic buy. I want to own 30% by the time London wakes up. This was colossally risky. It would cost a fortune. Sir, that will cost a premium. I don't care about the premium, Julian. Robert slammed his hand on the table, the first crack in his calm facade. I care about the message. Do it. As Julian began to execute the most aggressive stock raid of his career, Robert's phone rang. It was his London ground team. Mr. Sinclair, we have eyes on the crew. They've landed at Heathrow Terminal 3. They're clearing customs now. The crew bus is waiting. Good, Robert said. I want to know which hotel they're at. The second they check in, I want the name of the senior crew member, Brenda Hoskins, flagged. I want her hotel room phone to ring at 6 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Tell her she is to report to the Aero Meridian London corporate office in Hounslow by 9 a.m. for an immediate performance review with the CEO. Understood, sir. And who should I say is calling? Tell her, Robert said. It's on behalf of the new owners. Brenda Hoskins stumbled out of the crew bus at the Heathrow Plaza Hotel, a standard beige airport hotel. Her feet ached. Her back ached. All she could think about was a hot shower and a full 18 hours of sleep before the return flight. She'd already forgotten about the girl in 34B. She was just another inconvenience in a long, thankless career. She checked in, dragged her bags to room 412, and fell onto the bed. Beep, beep, beep. Brenda swatting at the bedside alarm clock. It wasn't the alarm, it was the phone. She groggily looked at the clock. 6:02 a.m. She had been asleep for 3 hours. She snatched the receiver. What? Miss Brenda Hoskins. The voice was crisp, British, and utterly impersonal. Yes, who is this? This is the office of the UK station manager for Aero Meridian Global. You are to report to our corporate headquarters in Hounslow at 9 a.m. sharp for an emergency performance review with the executive team. Brenda sat bolt upright. What? No, I'm on my mandatory layover rest period. I'm not due for a review. There's a mistake. This is not a request, Ms. Hoskins. A car will be waiting for you at 8:30 a.m. You will be joined by Mr. David Markham, our CEO, via video link. Failure to attend will be considered immediate grounds for termination. The line clicked dead. Brenda's blood ran cold. A review? With the CEO? This was not normal. This was an execution. Her mind raced. It was that man, the one in 22C. He wrote a letter. He must have. That arrogant, self-righteous. She threw the covers off, her heart pounding with adrenaline and rage. She had survived 22 years of complaints. She would survive this one. Meanwhile, in a luxury suite at the Savoy in central London, Maya Sinclair was finally waking up. Her father had arranged for a car to pick her up, and she'd slept soundly, the horrors of the flight fading slightly. Her audition was tomorrow. Her phone rang. It was her dad. "Hey, Dad." "Maya, baby." Robert's voice was warm, but she could hear the steel underneath it. "How are you? Are you at the hotel?" "I am. It's beautiful." "Thank you, Dad." "Maya, I need you to tell me what happened on that flight. I got your text, but I need to know everything. Every word." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, and for 10 minutes she recounted the entire, humiliating ordeal. The honey, the people like you, the broken screen, the feigned ignorance, the spilled water, the reading light, and finally, the conversation she overheard in the galley. And she said she put me back in my box. "Dad," she said, "nothing ever happens." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Maya could picture her father's face, the way his jaw set when he was truly, profoundly angry. "Dad?" "Thank you, Maya," he said, his voice quiet. "That's all I needed. You focus on your audition. Forget this. Forget her. You go and you play your heart out. I'll handle the housekeeping." "What are you going to do, Dad? Write a letter?" "Something like that," Robert said. "I love you. I'll see you tomorrow." He hung up. He was still in his New York office. It was just after 3 a.m. Julian was asleep on a couch. The market raid was complete. Robert looked at the final tally on the screen. Sinclair Holdings, 46.2% of AMGL. It wasn't 51%, but it was more than enough. They were, without question, the new power. He looked at his other screen, a video feed waiting to go live. In 1 hour, David Markham, the CEO, would be logging on for the most important meeting of his life. Robert loosened his tie. "All right, David," he said to the blank screen. "Let's talk about your company's rot." Brenda Hoskins walked into the Aero Meridian corporate office like a woman walking to her own execution. She had put on her full, crisp uniform, a layer of armor, her face a mask of professional makeup. She was led into a sterile, windowless conference room. Her direct supervisor, a nervous man named Philip, was there, as was the UK station manager. At the head of the table, a 70-inch screen was dark. "Brenda, thank you for coming in," Philip said, avoiding her eyes. We have a serious matter to discuss." "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, Philip," Brenda said, taking her seat, arranging her skirt. A passenger in 22C was being very disruptive. The screen flickered to life. 2 video feeds appeared. On the left was David Markham, the CEO, looking pale and sleepless in his home office in Chicago. On the right was a man Brenda had never seen, sharp, dressed in an immaculate suit, exuding an aura of absolute, terrifying power. This was Robert Sinclair. "Miss Hoskins," David Markham began, his voice strained, "we are here with Mr. Robert Sinclair. As of this morning, Mr. Sinclair is our new primary stakeholder and will be overseeing all executive operations." Brenda felt the floor drop out from under her. Stakeholder. Mr. Sinclair, Markham continued, has requested this review. Robert Sinclair leaned forward, his eyes locked on Brenda through the camera. Ms. Hoskins, I've been reviewing the performance reports for your division. Tell me, what is Aero Meridian's policy on discriminatory behavior? Brenda's mouth was dry. We have a zero-tolerance policy, sir. We value all our passengers. Do we? Robert's voice was dangerously quiet. Let's talk about flight AM-112, yesterday. Passenger 34B, a 17-year-old girl named Maya Sinclair. Brenda's blood turned to ice. Sinclair? Oh, God, oh, God. I remember the passenger, Brenda stammered, her facade cracking. She was demanding an upgrade. Was she? Robert countered. Or was her in-flight entertainment system broken? And was she politely inquiring about a solution? Well, it was broken, yes, but And what was your solution, Ms. Hoskins? Did you reset the system? Did you offer her a portable tablet? Did you offer her a voucher? I was very busy with boarding, sir. I told her I would look into it. No, Robert said. You didn't. You told her, and I quote, business class is for premium passengers. You called her honey. And then you told her, people like you need to stay where they are assigned. Brenda turned ashen. I never said that. That is a lie. She is lying. So she's lying? Robert asked. She's also lying about you spilling a full cup of ice water on her, and forgetting her meal, and telling her to turn off her reading light, claiming she was disturbing a passenger who was sound asleep. It was turbulence. The reading light was distracting. These are baseless accusations. Brenda was desperate, her voice rising. It's her word against mine. She was just an entitled teenager in a tracksuit. In a tracksuit, Robert repeated, nodding slowly. And that's how you judged her. That, and the color of her skin. I did not. I am not a racist, Brenda shrieked. This is her word against mine, she said again, grabbing at the only defense she had. You can't prove any of it. Robert Sinclair looked down at his desk for a moment. He seemed to be reading something. You're right, Miss Hoskins. It's a he said, she said situation, and that's just not good enough. That's why I prefer evidence. He looked up. David, please play the audio file sent to us this morning by passenger 22C, Mr. James Henderson. Who? Brenda whispered. Mr. Henderson, as it turns out, is the senior European correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, Robert said. And he was so appalled by your behavior that he not only wrote a 2-page memo detailing every microaggression, he also, well, he has a habit. He's a journalist. He records everything. Markham hit a key, and Brenda's world ended. Her own voice filled the conference room, tinny but clear, recorded on Henderson's phone. Audio. People like you need to understand that. You should stay where you're assigned. Audio. It's just water, honey. It'll dry. Audio from the galley, muffled but audible. She waltzes on in her knockoff tracksuit. I put her right back in her box. Someone has to. The room was silent. Philip was staring at the table. The UK station manager was writing something on a legal pad. Brenda was no longer breathing. She was hyperventilating. So, Robert Sinclair said, his voice now devoid of all emotion. It seems passenger 34B was not in fact lying. It seems you are. You lied to your supervisors and you lied to me. But the part I'm most interested in is the part where you said, nothing ever happens. He leaned in, his face filling the screen. You see, Miss Hoskins, you are a symptom of a disease, a rot. The rot of prejudice and petty tyranny, The rot that says you can treat people as less than human because of how they look or what you assume they're worth. Mr. Sinclair, I didn't know. Brenda was openly weeping now, the tears carving black streaks through her makeup. I didn't know who she was. If I had known she was your daughter, I would have... You would have what? Robert roared, his voice exploding into the room, making everyone jump. You would have been a decent human being. Decency shouldn't depend on a bank account, Miss Hoskins. You did this to my daughter, and the only thing you regret is that you got caught. He looked at Markham. David. Markham snapped to attention. Yes, Mr. Sinclair. Ms. Hoskins is terminated, effective immediately, for cause. No severance, no pension payout. I want her escorted from the building. And I want her flight certification flagged for review with the FAA and the ASA for discriminatory conduct and passenger endangerment. I want her blacklisted. I want her to never, ever be in a position of authority over another human being again. Sir, Brenda begged, please, I have a mortgage. My career, 22 years. Your 22 years are over, Robert said. You should have thought of that before you tried to break the spirit of a 17-year-old girl. Get her out of my sight. Philip and the manager stood up. Brenda was sobbing, a broken, hysterical mess. No, please, you can't do this. As she was led out, a thought struck her. She looked back at the screen, at the CEO. Mr. Markham, you can't let him do this. This isn't policy. David Markham wouldn't meet her eyes. He's right, Brenda. It's over. She was gone. The room was empty. Markham let out a shaky breath. Mr. Sinclair, Robert, a terrible, terrible incident. I am profoundly sorry. I will be on the next flight to London to apologize to your daughter personally. We will, of course, be issuing a full... Don't bother, David, Robert said, cutting him off. Sir? You're fired, too. Markham's face went slack. What? Robert, you can't. I'm the CEO. You were the CEO. You presided over a company with a 40% stock collapse and a culture that allowed women like Brenda Hoskins to flourish for 22 years. You are the head of the rot. The board will be calling an emergency session in 1 hour to accept your resignation. If you fight it, I will release Mr. Henderson's audio and his full story to every newspaper on the planet. Your career will be over. This way you just get to retire. Your choice. Markham stared, speechless, as Robert Sinclair's feed went black. The feed went black. David Markham stared at the empty screen, the reflection of his own horrified face staring back at him. It took a full 10 seconds for the sound to return to the world, for him to hear his own heart hammering against his ribs. He can't be serious, Markham whispered, looking at the stunned faces of Philip and the UK station manager. But he was. Robert Sinclair was deathly serious. Meanwhile, in the New York penthouse, Robert Sinclair didn't even take a breath. He was already on to the next phase. Julian Vance, his chief counsel and fixer, was standing by, a notepad full of logistics for the corporate takeover. All right, Julian, Robert said, loosening his tie for the first time in 24 hours. Phase 1 is complete. The rot has been cut out. Understood, sir, Julian said. All business. I'm compiling a list of candidates for interim CEO. We'll need to send a team to Chicago to stabilize the C-suite and another to Hounslow. We need to get ahead of the union negotiations for the new quarter, and I strongly recommend a full rebranding campaign. New livery, new uniforms, to distance us from the... Sell it, Robert said. Julian stopped, his pen hovering over the pad. Sir? Sell it, Julian. All of it. Our entire 46.2% stake. Dump it. Julian blinked. He was a man who processed multi-billion-dollar transactions before breakfast. He was not, however, a man who understood this. Sir, sell it? We just bought it. The raid cost us. Mr. Sinclair, the premium we paid was astronomical. If we sell now, on this news, we will light close to $1 billion on fire. It's financial malpractice. It's not finance, Julian. It's pest control, Robert said, walking to the window. The first grey light of dawn was breaking over Manhattan. I never wanted an airline. I wanted a reckoning. I looked into the financials, Julian. The rot isn't just Brenda Hoskins. It's everywhere. It's in their HR files, their promotion structure, their settlements for lost baggage that were actually discrimination suits they buried. It's in Markham's golden parachute. But, sir, we could fix it, Julian argued, his voice passionate for the first time. We own it. We can tear it down to the studs and rebuild it. Make it a model of corporate responsibility. That's the Sinclair Holdings way. No, Robert said, his voice flat and final. You can't fix a foundation built on poison. You demolish the building. This company doesn't deserve to be saved. It deserves to be an example. An example of what? Our catastrophic losses. An example of consequence, Robert snapped. I want to send a message. Not just to airlines, but to every company that thinks a human resources complaint is just paperwork. I want them to see what happened to Aero Meridian and ask themselves, could a Robert Sinclair buy us? Julian was pale. This was scorched earth. This was biblical. How do we even do this? We can't just dump that much stock. It'll trigger every circuit breaker. The SEC will... The SEC, Robert interrupted, will be the least of their problems. Here's the plan. Phase 2. He turned from the window, his eyes blazing. First, you're going to call James Henderson at the Wall Street Journal. Sir, he's the man in 22C, the one who recorded the audio. He's already a witness. Now he gets the exclusive. I want you to give him everything. The audio of Brenda in the galley. The full audio of the termination hearing with Markham and Hoskins. The fact that Markham was fired. The fact that I am the new owner. And the fact that my daughter was the girl in 34B. I want the human story, Julian, not the business one. Julian was writing frantically. Sir, that's deliberately crashing the stock. Our own stock. That is blatant market manipulation. It is not, Robert corrected him, a predatory smile touching his lips. It is radical transparency. As the new primary stakeholder, I have discovered gross systemic mismanagement, a culture of rampant discrimination and executive leadership that actively covered it up. I am fulfilling my duty by informing the public. The market will react as it should. It's not my fault their true value is 0. He let that sink in. Second, Robert continued, the moment that article goes live, I want an anonymous tip, complete with a copy of the WSJ article, sent to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Tell them to open a pattern and practice investigation into Aero Meridian's hiring, promotions and customer service. The article will be all the probable cause they need. My God, sir, Julian whispered. You're not just selling the company, you're executing it. The company executed itself, Julian. It just didn't know it yet. Get it done. In a London flat, James Henderson was nursing his third coffee, writing what he assumed was a futile, angry letter to Aero Meridian's customer service portal. He was a seasoned journalist who had covered wars and financial collapses. He knew a formal complaint was just screaming into the void. His phone rang. An unknown New York number. Henderson? Mr. James Henderson? This is Julian Vance, Chief Counsel for Sinclair Holdings. Never heard of you? Henderson said, ready to hang up. You will. My employer, Mr. Robert Sinclair, is the new majority owner of Aero Meridian Global. He's taken a personal interest in your complaint regarding Flight AM-112. Henderson sat up. Owner? I just landed 8 hours ago. How? Mr. Sinclair moves quickly, Julian said dryly. He wanted to thank you for your memo and your audio file. He found it persuasive. Persuasive how? Persuasive enough that he has, as of 1 hour ago, terminated CEO David Markham for cause. And of course, flight attendant Brenda Hoskins. Henderson was speechless. He was used to chasing stories, not having them delivered on a platinum platter. You fired the CEO? Because of a flight attendant? Because of a culture, Julian corrected. And Mr. Sinclair would like to offer you the exclusive. We will provide you with the full, on-the-record audio of the galley conversation, the complete audio of the termination hearing, and a statement from Mr. Sinclair himself. The only condition is that you also tell the story of the passenger in 34B. Her name is Maya Sinclair. She's his daughter. Henderson felt a jolt of electricity. This wasn't a story. This was the story. Mr. Vance, send me everything you have. I'll have this on the front page by midnight, London time. We're counting on it, Julian said, and hung up. The story dropped at 7 p.m. Eastern, just as Wall Street was waking up and London was settling in. The Wall Street Journal headline was an explosion. Airline of hate, billionaire Robert Sinclair buys Arum Lobel in 7-hour raid to fire racist flight attendant who humiliated his daughter. It was, as James Henderson later wrote, the single most read story of his career. It wasn't a business piece. It was a saga of corporate hubris and biblical revenge. The article included the full, damning transcripts. Brenda Hoskins. She waltzes on in her knockoff tracksuit. I put her right back in her box. Robert Sinclair, you did this to my daughter, and the only thing you regret is that you got caught. Robert Sinclair, you're fired too. The story went supernova. It was picked up by every news outlet on Earth. Aero Meridian, Yandrasa Brenda Hoskins, and Robert Sinclair were the top 3 trending topics on the globe. Morning shows cancelled their celebrity interviews to discuss the audio. Social media was a torrent of outrage. Other Aero Meridian passengers and employees, now protected by the company's implosion, came forward. A black pilot, repeatedly passed over for captain, shared his story. A Hispanic flight attendant, fired for insubordination after reporting a senior crew member, shared hers. It was a digital dam break. Aero Meridian wasn't just a company with one racist employee. It was a toxic ecosystem. When the New York Stock Exchange opening bell rang on Monday morning, it was a formality. It was an execution. The ticker for AMGL flashed on the screen, $14.50. Then, $9.20. Then, trading halted. The sell orders were so massive, so absolute, that the market's circuit breakers triggered instantly. When it reopened 15 minutes later, it was a free fall. $7 tations, $50, $30. On CNBC, a panel of financial analysts stared in disbelief. I've never seen anything like it, one said, rubbing his temples. Robert Sinclair just willingly lit. He checks his math. $800 million on fire. It's the most expensive HR complaint in human history, another shrieked. He didn't just fire the CEO, he vaporized the entire company. By noon, the final blow landed. A spokesperson for the Department of Justice, standing in front of a row of American flags, announced a full and sweeping pattern and practice investigation into Aero Meridian Global, based on credible and voluminous evidence of systemic discriminatory conduct. That was it. Their lenders called in their loans. Their fuel suppliers cut off their credit. By 4 p.m. on Monday, Less than 72 hours after Maya Sinclair asked for a seat upgrade, Aero Meridian Global filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The fallout was immediate. Passengers were stranded mid-journey. Airports were flooded with crying families holding useless tickets. And thousands of employees, the good pilots, the kind flight attendants like Tom, the gate agents, the mechanics, were suddenly jobless. The karma was hard, but it was also messy. It was a bomb that took out the guilty and the innocent all at once. And what of Brenda Hoskins? She had landed back in New Jersey, blissfully unaware, until her supervisor called her and told her not to come to the airport. Just watch the news, Brenda. She turned on the TV and saw her own face. She heard her own voice. Put her back in her box. She became, overnight, the most hated woman in America. Her address was leaked. Her social media was flooded with threats. She was fired, of course, but that was just the beginning. The mortgage she had pleaded about was real. With her pay frozen and her career gone, the bank foreclosed in 30 days. She was evicted. She tried to get another job. She had 22 years of experience. "We're so glad to have you, Brenda," the HR manager at a budget airline said, smiling. "Just need to do the standard background check." He typed her name into Google. His smile froze. He looked up, his face pale. "Oh, you're that Brenda Hoskins. I'm afraid the position has just been filled. Security will see you out." It was the same everywhere. The FAA and ESA, under intense public pressure, had put her flight certification under permanent review, citing conduct unbecoming and passenger endangerment. She was blacklisted, unhireable, toxic. 6 months later, on a cold, rainy November night, Brenda Hoskins was working the graveyard shift at a 24-hour convenience store off the New Jersey Turnpike. Her blonde bob was gone, replaced by stringy, mousy brown hair. She wore a stained blue vest and a name tag that read Brenda H. A man in a business suit, grabbing a coffee, peered at her. "Hey," he said, squinting. "I know you. You're that racist flight attendant, aren't you?" Brenda flinched, her body tensing. She looked down at the register, her face burning with a shame so deep it had burned out her tears. "That'll be 250, she muttered, not looking up. "Next in line." She had told Tom, "Nothing ever happens." She was wrong. She hadn't just been fired. She had been erased. Her hard karma wasn't a prison cell. It was a lifetime of minimum wage, of being recognized, of living in the very box she had tried to put Maya in. 2 days after the company's collapse, Robert Sinclair sat in a small, acoustically perfect auditorium at the Royal Academy of Music in London. He wasn't a shark. He wasn't a billionaire. He was just a dad, sitting in the back row, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Maya walked onto the stage. She looked small, alone under the single spotlight. She saw her father, and her eyes, for a second, were full of the weight of the last 48 hours. She had seen the news. She knew what he had done. She knew that thousands of people were out of work, all because of her. She closed her eyes. She took a breath. She thought of Brenda's sneer. "People like you." She had to prove she wasn't just the billion-dollar baby who had cost thousands their jobs. She was a musician. She had earned this. She raised the 1741 Guarneri to her chin, and she played. It was Paganini, a composition so technically demanding it was considered a musical demon. But Maya didn't just play the notes. She attacked them. She channeled the cold humiliation of 34B, the fury of the spilled water, the despair of the galley conversation, and the final, soaring, complex power of her father's retribution. The music was fire and pain and, in its final, triumphant notes. It was freedom. When she finished, the auditorium was utterly silent. The judges, 3 of the most revered musicians in the world, were staring. Finally, the head of the panel, an elderly woman, spoke. "Ms. Sinclair," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "That was profound. Art is not about perfection. It is about truth. You have shown us a great deal of truth today. Welcome to the Royal Academy." Maya ran from the stage, her violin case in hand, and launched herself into her father's arms. "I did it, Dad!" she cried, tears of joy and release streaming down her face. "I got in. I got the full scholarship." "I never had a doubt," Robert said, holding her tight. "I have never been more proud of you." They walked out of the academy into the bright, cold London afternoon. Maya was quiet for a long time. "Dad," she finally said, stopping on the sidewalk. "The airline. It's gone. The news said 20,000 people are out of work. All because of me." Robert put his hands on her shoulders. "No, Maya, look at me. Not because of you, because of Brenda, because of David Markham, because of a board of directors that cared more about fuel hedges than human decency. A company is not a logo or a fleet of planes, baby. It's a set of values, and their values were rotten. I didn't destroy that company. I just held a mirror up to it, and it shattered. But the people, the other flight attendants, the pilots, the good ones, the Toms of the world, they'll be hired in a week by Delta, by British Airways, by airlines that are desperate for qualified staff. The market will fix that. I just helped it clear away the rot." Maya still looked troubled. "But the money, Dad. The news. They said you lost almost $1 billion. Just to fire one mean lady." Robert Sinclair smiled, a real, warm smile. He put his arm around his daughter, and they started walking again. "Maya, money is just paper. It's a tool. It's a way of keeping score in a game I've already won. I've lost that much on a bad currency hedge. I've spent that much on a stock buyback just to prop up a price. It's an illusion." He stopped and looked at her. "I used that tool to buy you something, to buy us something." "What?" "The knowledge that you were heard, the proof that your dignity is priceless. I wanted you, and every other person who looks like you, and every other person who's ever been told to stay in their box, to know that their voice matters. And I was willing to pay any price to hear Brenda Hoskins say, 'Nothing ever happens,' and for her to be so wrong." He tapped her violin case. "Now, enough about that. You played the Paganini from your heart. But I have a question." "What?" Maya asked, a small smile finally returning to her face. "Did you play it from 34B? "I did, Dad," she laughed. "I played it right from 34B. "That's my girl," he said. And they walked down the street, a father and a daughter, their conversation turning from the ashes of a fallen company to the bright, limitless future of her music. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's a multi-billion-dollar corporate takeover executed in 7 hours. Robert Sinclair taught the world that while prejudice and hate are free, he was willing to pay any price to stamp it out. Brenda Hoskins learned the hard way. The system only protects you until someone powerful enough decides to break it. The next time you see someone being mistreated, on a plane, in a store, or on the street, you might just be witnessing the before in a story of hard karma. What did you think of Robert's lesson? Was it justice, or was it too much? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with your friends. And please subscribe to the channel for more true-life stories of karma and justice. We read all your comments, and your support means the world. We'll see you in the next video.